2022. It's our first live stream of the new year. Hi, I'm Aaron Schatz, editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders, joined as always on Mondays by Ian O'Connor from EdjSports. Thank you for watching us on your app of choice, whether it be Twitch or YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. And please, we would welcome your comments and questions during the show. Absolutely, let's talk about Week 17. In the NFL, as always, Ian is here to break down coaching decisions and the major big plays that changed win probability throughout the weekend. Although the weekend this week was just Sunday, no Saturday games this week. There will be Saturday games next week. Let's start with the biggest game of the day, Kansas City and Cincinnati, one of the most exciting games of the year with an intense ending. Huge upset for Cincinnati, knocking Kansas City out of the number 1 seed and putting Tennessee there, and thus making the people of Nashville send me very mean and obnoxious memes. Not nice human beings. One of the incredible offensive performances by the Bengals, Jamar Chase, one of the top 10 wide receiver games in the history of our stats. So let's talk about good calls and bad calls in this game from Zach Taylor and Andy Reid. Really interesting, some moves in this game.
Yeah, Zach Taylor, a little bit of both. We'll start with the good. About halfway through the third quarter, trailing 28-24, had a 4th and 1 on their own 45. Chose to go for it. It was a 5.7% increase in pre-snap win probability versus a punt in this situation. Was the 5th best 4th down go of the week. I can't tell if I'm surprised by this or not because Zach Taylor has been kind of hit or miss. He's 17th overall in our coach rankings, about middle of the pack in CCI when it comes to 4th down decision making. Had some really good calls early in the year in his own territory. They got criticized for. Had the big one in overtime against the Vikings in week 1 where he went for it. They won the game. This one, in a game against the Chiefs, we hear it all the time with Mahomes on the other side. You can't be punting and kicking field goals on 4th and short. Brandon Staley got hammered for it a couple weeks ago because they didn't convert them, or they converted a couple, but really struggled there. But all in all, it's going to come out. It's a better for you to go for it, especially on a 4th and 1. You're nearing midfield. Expected to convert that, upwards of 70% of the time, on average. And the Chiefs have a good defense. The Bengals offense, at this point was looking really good, especially they got in that 14-0 hole. But really good decision from Taylor. Ends up only being 5th best of the week because, as we've talked about the last couple weeks, there have been some really good calls across the NFL. Our errors, at least the highest errors, are getting smaller in terms of magnitude there. So really good one from Zach Taylor. Ended up completing it. So that's something you really like to see from Zach Taylor.
And then that drive ultimately ended in a punt, but eventually the Bengals took the lead on their next possession, went up 31-28. Then the Chiefs responded with a field goal to tie it at 31, and then it got really good. 3rd and 27 on the Kansas City 41. You think you're pretty cooked at that point, but no.
No, not with the day that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase had yesterday, man. Like I said, 3rd and 7, Kansas City 41, 3:19 left. Kansas City, almost certain they're going to get a stop here and force, a field goal, a longer or a medium field goal at this point. But Joe Burrow hits Jamar Chase down, I think it was around the right side of the sideline. Just an amazing catch over the defender, keeping his feet in bounds all the way down to the 11. Was a 24.1% increase in win probability, the 5th most impactful play of the week. So they've got the 5th best call and 5th most impactful play that, it ended up being the final drive of the game, was able to convert. And then, like you said, Aaron, got interesting. It got fun. Come down, 57 seconds left. The Bengals had 1st and goal at the 1, weren't able to get it in 3 times. Couple of Joe Burrow sneaks. Joe Mixon got it, couldn't get in. Zach Taylor decides to go for it. So this was the talk of the town as far as decision making. There was obviously a bigger story, it seemed like, with Antonio Brown, but that's something we don't really put any numbers to there. There's a whole lot more going on. But this one, we actually like the field goal better. This is actually one of those, and we were just talking about this beforehand, Aaron, how a lot of the models, like none of them are really in agreement with each other. These are all over the place. Like we have this as a big error. There are some other models that have them as errors, but a little bit smaller. There's some people that have it as the right decision to go for it. Even Tony Romo said he was torn. Like he kind of went back and forth a couple times, couldn't figure it out. But we actually like the decision to kick the field goal better here. Less than a minute left. I think it comes out if you don't get it and the Chiefs get the ball at their own one when we ran it there. Under 50% to score, almost a coin flip. If you kick off to them, with a 3-point lead, it's down to about 25 or 30%. So 1 in 3, which you think isn't a lot. That's pretty good. That's, going to be upwards of really any other team in the league. Maybe the Packers, the Bucks, teams like that. But really, we just like the decision to kick the field goal there. Almost guaranteed, almost 100%, obviously not 100%, but pretty much a guarantee. That's one of those situations where I would almost call it taking the points because it is almost a certainty at that point.
Now, what the Bengals got was a illegal hands to the face call on L'Jarius Sneed, but that's accounted for in the model, the possibility of the penalty. But then once they got that, they got a new set of downs. That was it. The game was over. All they had to do was kneel on the ball and then kick the field goal, and they won. Which brings up the question that a lot of people were asking online, which was when this whole thing started and the Bengals got to 1st and goal on the 1 in the first place, should the Chiefs have just let them score so that they had enough time to come back and try to tie the game?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really a lot closer than you'd think, a lot closer than even I thought it would be. So with the 1st and goals at the 2-minute warning, the Chiefs still had, I believe it was 2 timeouts at that point. Cincinnati was around 82.5% to win. If Kansas City let them score, Cincinnati would have dropped to about 80.3 pending the PAT and the kickoff. So about 2.5%. But as it played out, as they stopped them on 2nd and goal, 3rd and goal, Kansas City used those timeouts. I think only 9 or 10 seconds went off the clock between those 2 plays. It ended up being about a 1% increase from the first down stop to the second down for Cincinnati in terms of win probability. So it increased their chances to win by 1% by getting stopped. From 2nd to 3rd down, it was pretty much the same. There was no impacts on getting stopped. Kansas City used their timeout, still time left. Then, as I mentioned, it's that 4th down where you get where they obviously drop. They've got one shot to either get in the end zone or they've got the field goal to increase, but they're still lower. But yeah, only 2.5%, really a small amount you would think. So I even thought as I was running this live when it was happening that it was going to be a much bigger difference between letting them score. But I mean, as it played out, we saw the Chiefs stopped them a handful of times, ended up getting the offsetting penalties on the 1st, 4th down, and then the defensive penalty on the 2nd one. But really ended up being kind of a wash. We talk about 2.5 not being a lot. It does matter at times. Every little bit counts. But coming down to it in hindsight, the way it played out, they probably should have, so they could at least get the ball back. But as far as at that moment, not knowing what's going to happen, only about 2.5% on the line.
All right, let's talk about Philadelphia and Washington. That was another big game to set up Philly getting into the playoffs. And Nick Sirianni was 7th in our coach rankings, had a really good aggressive call game, but also bad calls in this game, both good and bad.
Yeah, he had our 5th worst play call that comes out as a 4% error. It was a 4th and 4 on the Washington 45-yard line. Chose to punt. They were down 13-7. One of those across midfield, a 4th and medium. Chance of conversion is going to be, probably in the 40s, 40%. But this, ends up being the 5th worst. He had a handful of other play calls that were errors that were, in the 2% range that aren't in the top 5. But overall, as you mentioned, had a really good game. Second half were 2 of the best that we had this week. It was 4th and 1 or 4th and goal on the 1. Pretty much a no-brainer at this point in the NFL. We've seen a few teams kick in this situation, but here they're down 16-7. Field goal does help you, but halfway through the 3rd quarter, taking a chance on the touchdown there is worth it, and that's what they did. It's a 7.2% increase in pre-snap win probability, 4th best of the week, and then 2nd best comes out at 9.5%. This was 5.5 minutes left. They have since taken a 17-16 lead. They're up 1. They can try a long field goal, about 60 yards with Jake Elliott, who's had a really good season. But that's a long field goal. Definitely no guarantee on that to take a 4-point lead. So a touchdown still beats you. You force them to try and score a touchdown. But he chose to go for it to try and run out more clock, to try and get down to score a touchdown or run out the clock or get another field goal. They ended up getting a field goal, which was one of those other errors he made. It was a 4th and short. But made the right call here. All in all, again, a really good day from Sirianni. His 4 fourth down goes, 3 of them were successful, combined for a 23.3% cumulative increase in win probability. His errors he did have that resulted still in a 13.1% net increase in pre-snap win probability between those fourth down goes and those errors. It ended up being the best in the league this week through 15 games. So a really good day at the office for Sirianni. You mentioned number 7 in our coach ranking, so really not surprising there from him, from what we've seen, and really from the Philly organization the last 4, 5, 6 years, or since that Super Bowl season.
And then Washington, down 20-16, making a push down the field in the final seconds of the game, had a costly pick that comes out in the most impactful plays of the week.
Yeah, not surprising that this one is one of our most impactful plays. Washington gets down the field, 30 seconds left. They got no timeouts. They have to get the ball in the end zone. 1st and 10 on the Philly 20. So got a lot of hope here still for the Washington football team faithful. But Heineke's pass is intercepted by Rodney McLeod in the end zone. Really good catch by him to keep that one off the turf. But it's a 44.9% decrease in win probability, taking them down obviously to 0.1, whatever, ending their hopes of winning in this situation.
Yeah. All right, let's now talk about another good. This is really close game. This was I had made the pick of the week, the Rams the pick of the week, but they did not cover. Rams did win though against the Baltimore Ravens with the big comeback victory. Sean McVay had a lot of errors in this game. Yes.
Yeah, more of the same from McVay. You know, people kind of, I don't know if people have kind of come around to the fact that he's not really a super aggressive coach as far as fourth downs. You know, just really good when it comes to offensive scheming, play calling, that kind of thing. But ever since that Super Bowl year that they made it, they had guys, you know, they had Jared Goff and Todd Gurley, and the offense was just awesome, but was still leaving a lot of win probability on the table. Given that offense, you know, there were situations where we would expect them to go for it and maybe not other teams because their offense was so strong. But then when it got to the Super Bowl, both them and New England had a handful of errors that year. But McVay, it's just kind of been more of the same. He's 13th overall in our coach rankings, propped up by the EPI of the Rams. They've been really good on field, obviously, but he's only 23rd in CCI after last week. So in this one, he had a couple curious decisions. One was early on in the game, coming up on the 2-minute warning. It was a 4th and 2 at their own 47. They're down 10-0 at this point. Conversion rate here, we'd expect them to convert around 60% of the time on that 4th and 2. Considering that offense against just a depleted Ravens defense, you would expect them, or we would expect them to probably convert at even higher rate than that. The required conversion rate, only 31%. So they're expected to convert that pretty much double what they would need to convert to justify going for it. So a punt in this situation is not the right decision. Going for it is a very strong recommendation. It was a 5.5% error pre-snap, which ends up being our 4th worst of the week. And then later on in the game, late in the 3rd quarter, they're down 9. They've got 4th and 1 at their own 34-yard line. A situation we saw them go for it against Green Bay early in the game on their own 34, 4th and 1 down 7. Didn't get it this time. They don't even choose to try. In this situation, the required conversion rate is only about 49%. The conversion rate that we'd expect them at, 4th and 1, nearly 70% of the time. So a little bit closer, but still over a 20% difference there between what they would need to convert versus what we'd expect them to convert at. So still a really strong very strongly in favor of going for it in this situation. And Sean McVay went conservative and failed the test once again.
Yeah, and then the Rams eventually, on the way to their big comeback, had a touchdown drive set up by a big 4th down play that comes out as one of the most impactful plays of the weekend.
Yeah, and he had to go for it. He really had no choice, which I guess that's good that he made the right call here. Wouldn't expect him to make the wrong call, but ends up being 4th most impactful play. 1:08 left in the game, 4th and 5 on the Baltimore 12. They have to have a touchdown, and Matt Stafford completes a pass to Odell Beckham Jr., makes a great catch, and hangs on right at the first down, just past the first down marker, setting up the game-winning touchdown. The 4th down conversion was a 31.4% increase in win probability for the Rams there, who you mentioned pulled off the comeback, were able to come away with the win there in Baltimore.
It's interesting because Stafford is struggling the last couple of weeks, keeps throwing the ball to the other team, but still for the whole season, the Rams are 6th or higher in all 3 phases of the game. So, I mean, this is still a really good all-around team.
Yeah, it's a team. It makes me nervous. Playoffs looking at, we talked Green Bay, locked up the number 1 seed, faced the Rams at home last year in the playoffs, but, they already beat them once. But you said the Rams really good at pretty much everything. So they're going to be a scary team in the playoffs.
All right, don't forget to check out Ian doing the updated coach rankings with Katie George. That's a video comes Wednesday on EdjSports.com. Let's talk about the most impactful plays of the week. Bring up the graphic, kids.
Yeah, fun week. So number 5 and number 4, we already covered. Number 5 was the third and long conversion, Jamar Chase, 24.1% increase. And then number 4, just talked about 30 seconds ago, OBJ's conversion on the 4th and 5 to keep that drive alive and to set up the game-winning touchdown. Number 3 is interesting. It was the play to Hunter Renfrow that was called a touchdown at first. Actually helped them that it got called back, put them down. I think it was a gain of 20 yards, 24 yards. So it took them, it was 3rd and 10 at the Indy 48 in a tie game, 54 seconds left. Ended up being a 24-yard gain, I mentioned, set them up. It was a 35.6% increase in win probability. They were able to run out the clock, kick a field goal to win the game. Hunter Renfrow, had said, "I'm glad I got called back." Kind of in the moment on that touchdown run when he wasn't sure he'd been touched, probably should have just gone down at the 1 or 2 anyway. In a situation like that, mid-play, sometimes it's hard to think that.
But the adrenaline's rushing through you. It's hard to think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, when you can take a touchdown, to make the other team go the length of the field, it's not a horrible thing, but it's just a little bit better to hold on to the ball so that the other team doesn't even get to touch it. But it ended up working out for the Raiders. Number 2, we got the Washington football team against the Eagles, one we just covered a moment ago. Taylor Heineke's pass intercepted in the end zone. It's a 44.9% drop in win probability, taking them down to 0%. And then number 1 in a weird game, obviously the antics of Antonio Brown in this one, but Tom Brady made it happen. Led the Jets or the Buccaneers down against the Jets. We'll get to that decision the Jets had on the previous drive in our best and worst decisions, but down 4, 1st and 10 at the 33, only 21 seconds left. Hit Cyril Grayson down on the right side, who catches it, kind of spins away from a guy. Looked like he was going for the ball, almost made a play on the ball, but was able to get in the end zone.
Safety went for the ball. I think the safety got over late and went for the ball, and Grayson got away from him.
Yeah, just kind of spun out and fell into the end zone just enough, and that's a 62.7% increase in win probability. So a huge play from Tom Brady yet again.
All of a sudden, in the last couple plays, it's like the Jets stopped covering the sidelines. It was very strict. They were covering deep down the sidelines, and then all of a sudden they were letting all this stuff in the middle of the field to take time off the clock, and then all of a sudden they kind of let the sidelines go in the last couple plays. Grayson, was just catching balls on the sideline.
Yeah.
Don't forget, if you're watching live, please ask us questions and make comments in the thread. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. We're on, almost every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern. No more Tuesday shows now, with fantasy basically over, but we'll be back Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 1 o'clock with more shows. So let's talk about the best coaching decisions that had the most positive impact on win probability. We've covered a couple of these already.
Mm-hmm. Yes, number 5 was the Zach Taylor 4th and 1 at his own 45. It was a 5.7% increase. It was successful. They picked up the first down there. Number 4, again, we covered the Eagles. Nick Sirianni, 4th and goal at the 1, was a 7.2% increase. That one was successful as well. Boston Scott got a touchdown there. Number 3, Frank Reich. Not really surprised to see him on this list. 4th and 1 at the Vegas 47. They're down 3 at this point. The Colts are. Still a lot of time left in this game, early in the second half. 12:23 in the game, but chooses to go for it. We saw this a few weeks ago against New England. Frank Reich always 4th and 1. He's got Carson Wentz, who we saw in that Super Bowl season before getting hurt. Very successful on quarterback sneaks, and got 8 points. It was an 8.1% increase. Good for 3rd best of the week. Also was successful. Number 2, we covered as well. Philadelphia, again, 4th and 1 at the 42. They're up 1 late in this game, looking to run out more clock, potentially get another score there. Was a 9.5% increase. Because was also successful.
60-yard field goals are hard.
Yes. No guarantee there, even with a good kicker. Justin Tucker, as good as he is, still not guaranteed from 60. So absolutely agree. The number 1 I just mentioned, we come up to this. So 24-20, 4th and 2 at the Tampa Bay 7, 2:17 left. If the Jets convert this, the game's over. They can run the clock out. They can kneel it out. As Tampa Bay has no timeouts. If they kick a field goal, they're up 7. That's great and all, but Tom Brady still has over 2 minutes to get down the field to get a touchdown to tie the game, maybe win it in regulation. They'd also be heavy favorites, or maybe not heavy favorites, but pretty good favorites in overtime if it came down to it. So going for it was the right call. I think we saw some people, we got some responses on Twitter from people. The question here is the
why did you run a quarterback sneak when you have 2 yards to go? Yep.
Yeah. And, I was looking up the numbers kind of on something I saw. It's from a couple years ago, I think, but looking at quarterback sneaks, they're only used very underutilized, like 10% of the time on 3rd or 4th and 1, but convert at this point, it was around like 85% of the time. Again, on 3rd or 4th and 1, a 4th and 2, I think it might have been you, Aaron, that tweeted this, or someone saying, especially as good as that interior defensive line is for Tampa Bay, and the Jets had been having success running the ball out, off the tackles.
They had been running the ball outside and having success, and all of a sudden they decided to go right up the middle for 2 yards, needing 2 yards, not 1, but 2.
So right call to go for it directionally, 11.4% increase in pre-snap win probability, but play call definitely could have been a lot better, which is something, I kind of tell people all the time with this stuff is we can say directionally, yes, that was the right call to go for it. Our model liked that call. But when it comes to the actual play call, it's kind of up to the discretion of the coaches, because our model doesn't know what that defense is looking like that day. The coach could maybe have been setting things up for a certain play or have certain 4th down plays. But yeah, that one was definitely questionable.
Chad Reuter says that Robert Saleh said after the game that the coaches were supposed to tell Wilson to hand off instead of following the play call. So they gave him the wrong play call, I guess. Hand off to Berrios on a jet sweep. Oh, that would have been a better play.
Yeah, much better.
Yep.
Well, maybe next time. So one thing we talked about, I was talking to Scott Brown this morning, our VP of Data Science, saying, it's almost kind of a win-win situation for the Jets, because if you're able to convert that, you win the game, you get another win. If you don't convert it and the Bucs go down and win, just like they did, you still keep your draft position, or at least helps you maybe potentially even move up. So it was kind of a win-win situation for the Jets at this point in the season. Who knows what they would have done earlier in the season, even if they were 0-2, 0-3, still a lot of football left. They may not have gone for it, may have settled for the field goal to try and force them to tie it or win it there.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about decisions that coaches made with the biggest negative impact on win probability.
Yeah, so we've covered a handful of these too, I believe. So we'll start. Number 5 was the Eagles. That 4th and 4 at the Washington 45, kind of, a mid 4th and medium at the 45, though. But the field position doesn't really help you, or the swinging the field position isn't really as beneficial to win probability as you would think. And with 2 minutes left, you're probably not going to get the ball back again. So it's not like you pin them deep and then there's a shot you get it back. Clock, each team had 3 timeouts. There was potential, but you can't really count on it with that little time left. But still, only a 4% error, not huge there. Number 4, Rams and Ravens, covered this one a little bit more in depth earlier. 4th and 2, coming up on midfield at the LA 47 out of the 2-minute warning in the second quarter. Choosing to punt was a 5.5% error. With that offense against the defense that the Ravens, have struggled lately, that's pretty much a no-brainer there for Sean McVay. Was able to pull out the win, but might cost him later on when they get into the playoffs. I mentioned they're kind of a dangerous team. They're very good, but with play calls like that, if you're giving the ball away, that's not necessarily the best thing to do. Number 3, Kyle Shanahan of the 49ers. See this a lot from him. They're facing the Texans. They're up 3 already. Maybe thinking, it's a 4th and 1 at their own 47. They punt. Maybe thinking, hey, it's the Texans. We'll be all right. Even though the Texans just coming off that big win against the Chargers, obviously, have played better as of late. Had a really good defense earlier in the year up until the last few weeks. But still, they're only, I think when I checked, like 26th against the run. And the 49ers had Trey Lance in at quarterback. They had Eli Mitchell back. They have Jeff Wilson. They have Deebo Samuel who can run the ball. You've got a handful of guys, maybe even run the triple option, like throwing it back to college and pick up that first down. That's 4th and 1, especially with that rushing team.
Love the option on 4th and 1. Option on 4th and 1 is a great play.
Yeah. So we saw the Cardinals ran it a couple times late in the game that picked up some chunks of yardage when they needed against the Cowboys. So Would have been smart for the 49ers to go for it there. That's a 6% error in pre-snap win probability. So not good from Shanahan. We really see that a lot from him, going pretty conservative. Number two, I'm kind of borderline between if it's surprising or not. Bruce Arians hasn't been aggressive.
It's Arians, so it's not surprising, but yeah. Punting on 4th and 6 at the Jets 39. It's just like, how many yards do you think you're going to get a field position punting from the 39?
Yeah. Even a field goal, it's a long field goal. Suck up, I don't think has the biggest leg in the league. Has kind of struggled on longer kicks.
Down 7, you don't kick a 57.
Yeah, even with a lot of time left. Yeah, field goal doesn't really help you as much. So it's just, we saw this situation with the 49ers last week on that Thursday night game. Seems like forever ago, right before Christmas. But they had a 4th and 9, like the Tennessee 41, with 8 or 9 minutes left, and chose to punt instead of going for it when they're down 7. And just with Tom Brady, yes, they're down Chris Godwin. AB was gone at this point. Mike Evans was playing through an injury or limited, was okay enough to play, but scored a touchdown. Rob Gronkowski had a big game. See guys like Tyler Johnson and Cyril Grayson come up big. Like with Tom Brady, they've got enough talent in the receivers that they can get something done on a 4th and 6. I'd rather keep the ball in Tom Brady's hands, and really Bruce Arians needs to do more of that, I think, on 4th downs. The ones he goes for are the pretty obvious 4th and 1 at the opponent, 35. So need to see a little bit more of that from Arians, but this was an 8.2% error. That's a big error this late in the game, or not this late in the game, sorry, with this much time left in the fourth quarter and on a 4th and 6. That's a pretty big error. So really going to have to get better than that with Bruce Arians. The number one covered, it was the field goal or the go for Zach Taylor instead of kicking the field goal.
Instead of kicking the field goal,
yeah. One point that, I wanted to make on this that I forgot earlier is, we say it was an error to go for it instead of kick the field goal. We had the field goal. There were about 81.5% chance to win. By going for it, they're still at 73, 75%. So it's not like they lose. They still win 3 out of 4 games. And that's a point that I like to try and make a lot of times, because people, see us saying it's an 8% error, a 12% error. But a lot of the times these teams are still in the 70s. It's when you get to the ones where they're 58%, 60% if they go, and 45% if they don't, where you become an underdog by kicking. But in this situation, the Bengals are still going to win 3 out of 4 times, no matter what they do in that situation.
Right. So it's not like, how can you say that he made the wrong decision, they won the game? Well, they were likely to win the game no matter what. So
yeah, it's not 100-0. It's not like you win or you lose at that point.
All right. You can find these every week and more over at the EdjSports.com top 5 section. That's EdjSports.com. Let's talk about Monday Night Football, which is the Browns and the Steelers, and the Browns have been eliminated from the playoffs. So the line on this one went from Browns -3 to Steelers -2, now that the Browns have nothing to play for. But, the NFL, its schedule is filled with games in the last week or two where one team has nothing to play for, and they come and they just bring it against a team that's trying to get into the playoffs. And, the example that I always bring up is the 2004 Buffalo Bills are the best team by DVOA to ever miss the playoffs. And all they had to do in week 17 was beat the Pittsburgh Steelers backups, and they couldn't do it. So there are plenty of times when teams with nothing to play for rise up. And there's a rivalry going on here between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. And I can't imagine Cleveland's going to lie down and be like, well, our season's over, so go ahead, just walk all over us. So
yep.
I still like the Browns to be favored in this game.
Yeah, I think it was wasn't it last year that the Browns, they were already in the playoffs and they had lost to Pittsburgh's backup at the end of the season. If I remember correctly, maybe the year they went 0-16 with Deshaun Kaiser, they were playing against a lot of backups for Pittsburgh and lost that game. But like you said, a big rivalry, a lot of bad blood between these two teams. Wouldn't be surprised to see a handful of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in this one, especially with the Browns being out of it, and maybe some taunting from those Steelers players as they still fight to get in the playoffs. But yeah, you mentioned this one's actually moved a half a point, in the last half hour or so since we did our EdjSports podcast just a little while ago, and is now up to Pittsburgh -3. We've still got it as Cleveland -1. So The margins, aren't huge to cover. We've got Cleveland about 57% to cover, to push or cover if it's at that -3, 64%. So a lot bigger chance for Cleveland to lose by 3 or less, or to win this game. So we like Cleveland. Looking at the total, we like the over in this one as well.
Yep.
So sitting at only 41.5. Make sure that, sorry, 43.5. So it's since come up a little bit, but 44 points. We've got it at 49. So we're expecting more points than the market is in this one. About almost 2/3 of our simulations results in more than 43.5 points, so 44 points or more. So like the over, like Cleveland. The public, though, all the bets, or 64% of the bets, the number of bets are on Pittsburgh. 75% of the money is on Pittsburgh. I was kind of wondering, with the money, maybe not, but I wonder how much stock people are putting into the, Big Ben's last game at Heinz Field.
How much of that money came in when it was still Browns -3, though? That's the question, right? I mean,
that's true.
How many of those people were betting on a completely different line?
Yeah, that's a good point. So,
because when it was Browns -3, I liked the Pittsburgh, but
yeah, because so really interesting. But yeah, a lot of that money. We'll see how it shifts from to now up until game time, potentially, if we see it go more towards Cleveland, which, as we both said, we like Cleveland. Wouldn't be surprising to see that come back towards 50-50 a little bit. But the Cleveland overall, has some good value, we think, betting them there, and then the total as well. The one good thing is I'm glad with Aaron Rodgers on the Manning cast, I'm glad that the Packers have already locked
game
up.
doesn't matter, so there's no
next week, so they can lose. The curse can still go on, and it won't affect me too much. But would still hate to lose to the Lions next week.
All right, thanks everybody for watching today. If you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, every day 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, not tomorrow because fantasy football season is basically over, but I'll be back Wednesday with Mike Tanier and Brian Knowles for the Ask Us Anything show. And thank you also to all the people listening after the fact on the Football Outsiders podcast network. And enjoy Monday Night Football. Thank you again for joining me, Ian. And I will see everybody in 2 days, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, take care.